Today I want to talk about symbolism. So when I was in high school literature class, I was very left-brained, and I would never understand why authors would use symbolism in literature. And maybe I'm dumb for not getting it, but I would just be like, if he wants to convey an idea, why doesn't he just write it out? Like, why doesn't he just tell us what he wants to say, like in an essay form or in straightforward dialogue or something like that? And it might have been because I was spark noting the books, and so I didn't understand, but I would get these kind of lukewarm explanations from people. People would be like, "Oh, it's more fun to like have a symbol. It's more artistic," and I didn't really know what that meant. They'd be like, "It's more artistic. That's just how literature works." But all these were very unsatisfactory to me, and they're still unsatisfactory to me. But if you're like me and you don't get it, I think I have a much better explanation for you. So when we read fiction, we are in our imaginal minds, right? When we read an essay, we're much more in our rational and verbal minds. And so it's a different experience, obviously, reading fiction versus reading an essay. And the experience of an imagining something is touching a different part of us than the experience of, reading an argument. And psychologists obviously are very interested in the imaginal realm. And a lot of the times, what we imagine or visualize has a much deeper effect on us than the rational arguments we receive. And so far, maybe everything I said was obvious. It wasn't obvious to me, honestly. But now let's say that the author throws in a symbol into the literature, right? So you're in the imaginal mind, you're visualizing what's happening, and suddenly he throws in a symbol of a snake or an olive tree or something like this, right? And I would read the book, and even if I was visualizing, I would see the snake or see the olive tree and just feel nothing, right? Like I wouldn't have any associations with it because nothing in my upbringing had ever charged these archetypes in my mind. Like I grew up watching SpongeBob, I grew up on the internet, I was not spending much time in nature. I would see the snake, I would see the olive tree, and it wouldn't really do anything for me. I would need other kids in class to kind of explain the meaning of it. But when I really looked into their eyes, like I don't think the symbols were really doing much for them emotionally either. I think rationally they were just like, oh, the olive tree means peace, so like he's talking about peace, or oh, the snake means it's a biblical reference, so he's like talking about the Bible. But it didn't like strike them, it didn't like strike their heart. And this is, yeah, I want to relate this to depth psychology or Jungian psychology. And the idea here is that it's not that, symbols are just this very efficient way of encoding information. Like instead of talking about peace or diplomacy, we can just show an olive tree. It's like when we visualize, I think when in like maybe someone in the medieval times, when they visualize an olive tree, it like really means something to them. They really feel stuff, and maybe even someone from the 20th century. I also would read all this poetry about use nature as metaphors, and everyone in my class would have to like rationally unpack, oh, what is the connection between the summer weeds and I don't even know but you can imagine what I'm talking about, right? There's some nature metaphor and we have to like open a fucking botany textbook to like understand what they're talking about. And then we're like, oh, we got it. But none of us really got it, right? Because the point is not that you're like intellectually trying to get what his connection, because he didn't make that connection intellectually. He's not like, oh, like what would be really clever to say right now? He actually, like, these are images that are coming to him spontaneously because the images of nature in his heart are charged with this power. And so that's why I think a lot of literature taught in school is it doesn't slap, right? Because I think most people come into class and all the images that are charged in their mind are just from memes. Like memes, TV shows, movies, that kind of stuff. But the literature that we read is using all this like biblical symbolism or nature symbolism. And yeah, maybe some kids have that, but a lot of kids don't, right? And so we lose, our imagination is not calibrated to the literary culture that we're exposed to. And now I want to connect this to this German philosopher slash thinker, Hans Fryer. And Hans Fryer was a Nazi, so he had a lot of bad ideas, but he has one very interesting take. And so he was basically very traditionalist, and he didn't believe in the mixing of cultures and religions. And, you can see how he became a Nazi. But his reasoning was very interesting. His reasoning was that every culture has their own national symbols, and it's very important to preserve the integrity of these national symbols and to have these unifying symbols. And it's for this reason, right? Because um, if you're able to charge these symbols collectively, then you have this almost shared national project of art and literature where you have a common language that's deeper than just words. You have a common language of images and emotions that are associated with these images. For example, if you're growing up in medieval Europe and all you read is the Bible and everyone around you is just reading the Bible, and someone makes a biblical reference in their poem or in their book or something like this, it'll really hit you because you've invested so much into that imagery and you're reading the Bible and you're in Bible land in your imaginal mind like all the time, and you've come up with your like personal relations to it. You're going to a priest and like he's charging it for you in different ways, and now you read a poet and then he has a slightly different angle, and these symbols are just getting richer and richer over time within your culture. But we don't have that, right? Because most of us are exposed to a billion different things. None of them are especially charged, and they're all different, right? So we don't really have this shared symbolic language. Of course, some symbols still persist, like the Buddha. Like it feels weird. Like I wouldn't pee on a Buddha statue, because it's just like I didn't grow up Buddhist, but it feels charged with some kind of religious, some kind of sacredness, right? So obviously there's some symbols, but it's not nearly the same as being in this homogenous culture. And I'm not saying Hans Frey was right and we all need to like become ethno states with one shared culture, but it is a very interesting problem to think about.